If you want to understand why you completely, froze up trying to talk to that stranger at the coffee shop today, you actually need to look at what you did with your duvet cover at 7 o'clock this morning.
Right, which sounds like a huge leap.
It totally does. But welcome back to your custom deep dive. Looking at the stack of sources you send over, we have this fascinating, almost weird spectrum of material.
Yeah, they usually live in completely different aisles of the bookstore.
Exactly. On one end, we have research on making your bed and the neurobiology of waking up. And then on the other end, we've got sociological breakdowns of how to make small talk and, build confidence in a second language. On the surface, those seem like entirely different planets.
But the through line in your sources is actually remarkable. I mean, we are looking at how mastering microscopic, seemingly insignificant actions, just in total isolation, eventually scales up to radically transform how you navigate really complex human interactions.
We are basically tracking the butterfly effect of your morning routine. So to do that, we have to start at minute 0 of your day. The sources make a really compelling case that you just cannot build external confidence or connect with other human beings if your brain is stuck in low gear.
Yeah, and the most common way we sabotage that gear shift is the snooze button.
Ugh, the dreaded snooze button.
Right. We convince ourselves that those extra 9 minutes of sleep are this, like, tiny luxury, a gentle way to ease into the day. But the biology tells a completely different, much harsher story.
It really does.
When your alarm goes off, your body has already spent a couple of hours preparing to wake up. It's slowly elevating your core temperature, releasing cortisol.
Just getting the system online.
Exactly. So when you hit snooze and drop your head back onto the pillow, you are plunging your brain back into the beginning of a brand new sleep cycle.
A cycle that usually takes about 90 minutes to complete, but, you're only giving it 9 minutes before the alarm screams again.
Which is why you feel that heavy, groggy, almost mildly nauseous confusion. The scientific term your sources use is sleep inertia.
Sleep inertia.
Yeah. You've abruptly interrupted a deep neurological process. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and alertness, is effectively offline.
Wow.
You haven't gained 9 minutes of rest. You have actively induced a state of neurological jet lag that can take up to 4 hours to clear out of your system.
Up to 4 hours. Reading that made me think of a stalled car. Hitting the snooze button is kind of like trying to restart a stalled engine, but you're turning the ignition key off halfway through the crank.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, you're just flooding the engine with fuel, not letting it ignite, and getting absolutely nowhere. You're actively damaging the startup sequence.
That analogy holds up perfectly. You are flooding the engine. To properly clear that engine and initiate the startup sequence, your sources highlight 2 non-negotiable physical interventions, which are light and water.
Just really basic biology.
Very basic. You need a glass of water immediately, simply because you just spent 8 hours running a marathon of respiration and sweating. I mean, you are waking up in a state of mild dehydration.
And dehydration shrinks brain tissue. Right.
It does, which causes fatigue.
Yeah.
But the light exposure is even more fascinating. It's not just about, turning on a lamp so you don't trip over your shoes. Opening the windows or getting natural sunlight into your eyes triggers a very specific mechanism.
Right. It halts the production of melatonin.
Exactly. Melatonin is the hormone that enforces sleep. So as long as you're shuffling around in a dark bedroom, your suprachiasmatic nucleus,
The master clock.
yes, the master clock in your brain, it just assumes it's still nighttime. So it keeps pumping melatonin into your bloodstream. Sunlight is the hard biological override. Photons hit your retina and send a signal that instantly cuts the melatonin supply.
But let's be real. Most of us don't look at the sun first thing. We look at a glowing rectangle.
Right, the smartphone.
Yeah, and the sources are absolutely ruthless about this point. They demand a strict 30-minute phone ban upon waking, no email, no social media, no news.
We have to look at the baseline chemistry of the brain here. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of anticipation and reward. When you wake up, your dopamine baseline is relatively low and stable.
Makes sense.
But if the very first thing you do is open a social media feed, which, let's remember, is engineered by thousands of highly paid developers to be a literal digital slot machine, you artificially spike your dopamine to massive levels.
And the brain just adjusts to that spike, says, oh, okay, this is the new normal for today. So then when you put the phone down and try to do something productive, like read a report or, I don't know, fold your laundry.
And rejects it.
Right. Everyday life suddenly feels agonizingly boring because it can't compete with the slot machine. You've basically ruined your attention span before your feet have even touched the floor.
You've handed the steering wheel of your morning over to an algorithm. Or, to a stressful work email that just floods your system with cortisol.
So how do we get the steering wheel back?
All right, the sources advocate for the 5-minute rule. You replace the phone with a low-stakes analog task. You stretch, you water a houseplant, or, most famously, you make your bed.
Which brings us back to the duvet cover. I mean, making the bed seems so trivial. It's not curing a disease or writing a symphony. But the mechanism at play isn't about interior design at all.
No, not at all. It's about establishing a psychological baseline of control. It is a behavioral vote for your own identity. You made a tiny, manageable promise to yourself at minute 0, and you executed it.
That early psychological win shifts your internal narrative. You're no longer a passive recipient of the morning. You're an active participant.
Exactly.
So, okay, we have this tiny win. We ignored the snooze, we drank water, we made the bed. But the question then becomes, how does making your bed actually help you achieve massive life goals? Because keeping a tidy room is great, but it doesn't teach you a new language or get you a promotion.
Right, there's a big gap there.
Yeah. The sources bridge this gap with the concept of the compound effect.
And the math behind the compound effect is staggering. It centers on the 1% rule. If you can improve a skill or a habit by just 1% every single day, the compounding nature of that growth means you will be roughly 37 times better by the end of 1 year.
37 times.
Yeah. The curve starts out completely flat, practically invisible, and then eventually skyrockets.
The theory is beautiful. It really is. A 1% improvement is so small it feels effortless. But I found myself pushing back on the sources here because human reality does not operate like a clean mathematical curve.
Oh, definitely not.
Life is incredibly chaotic. I might have the best intention to read 10 pages of a book to get 1% smarter, but then the dog throws up on the rug, my boss calls early, the commute is a total nightmare, and by the time I get home, that 1% improvement is entirely forgotten. Relying on memory and motivation just seems like a losing game.
Relying on motivation is absolutely a losing game. A motivation is an emotion, and emotions are volatile.
Right.
To survive the chaos you just described, the sources introduce a structural solution called habit stacking.
Okay, habit stacking.
You stop relying on your working memory to initiate a new behavior. Instead, you piggyback the new, fragile habit onto an old, deeply ingrained habit that happens automatically, no matter how chaotic the day is.
So you essentially use the existing habit as the trigger. You don't have to remember to do the new thing. You just have to recognize the old thing.
Exactly. Let's use your reading example. You probably make a cup of coffee every single morning without fail. It is hardwired into your basal ganglia. If your goal is to read more, your habit stack becomes an explicit formula.
Like after I make coffee.
Yes. After I press the button on the coffee machine, I will read exactly 2 pages of a book. The coffee machine is the environmental cue.
You're hacking your own autopilot. And the sources actually take this a step further with environment design. The idea is to manipulate the physical friction in your space, make the good behaviors frictionless and the bad behaviors highly frustrating.
Because we are incredibly lazy creatures by nature, we will always default to the path of least resistance.
We really will.
If you want to drink more water, you don't just rely on willpower. You place filled water bottles in your office, on your nightstand, next to the sofa. You drop the friction to 0.
And conversely, if you want to stop doom scrolling in bed, you leave the phone charger in the kitchen.
Yes. You force yourself to physically walk to another room to engage in the bad habit.
Or literally taking the batteries out of the TV remote and putting them in a drawer.
That's a great one.
Right. If you want to watch TV, you have to really want it enough to go fetch the batteries. But even with perfect environment design and flawless habit stacking, we're eventually going to fail. We'll get sick or travel or just have a terrible day.
It's inevitable.
I really appreciated the source's approach to failure here, specifically the never miss twice rule.
The never miss twice rule is crucial. Missing 1 day of a habit is simply an anomaly. It has 0 long-term impact on the compound curve. The danger lies in the psychological fallout of that miss.
The guilt.
Yeah. Often when people break a streak, they experience a profound sense of shame or the what the hell effect. They think, well, I ruined my perfect record. Might as well give up completely.
The never miss twice rule completely neutralizes that shame spiral. It reframes the first miss as an acceptable part of the process. It's the second day that is the critical juncture.
Exactly.
Missing 2 days in a row is no longer an anomaly. It is the establishment of a brand new negative habit. You can forgive the first slip instantly, as long as you fiercely protect the immediate recovery.
It creates a system of highly resilient consistency rather than fragile perfectionism.
Okay, so now we need to take all of these physical frameworks, the environment design, the friction manipulation, the 1% micro habits, and apply them to something completely abstract and deeply terrifying for a lot of people.
Yes, moving from the physical to the internal.
Right. The sources dive heavily into the challenge of speaking a second language, particularly English, with confidence. We've talked about designing our bedrooms and kitchens. Now we have to design the internal environment of our own minds.
We're talking about reprogramming the inner critic.
Yes.
The paralyzing fear for most language learners isn't a lack of vocabulary. It is the overwhelming anxiety of making a grammatical mistake or mispronouncing a word in front of a native speaker.
The internal friction is just so high that they choose silence.
To lower that friction, the sources advocate for a massive paradigm shift, which is prioritizing connection over perfection.
I love that. Connection over perfection.
We have somehow collectively forgotten what language is actually for. It is a biological tool for transmitting an idea from my brain into your brain. It is not an academic exam where points are deducted for using the wrong verb tense.
And the irony is that native speakers routinely mangle their own grammar. They use filler words, they lose their train of thought, they fracture sentences constantly.
Absolutely, exactly. A native speaker listening to a learner is not listening for errors. They are listening for meaning.
We treat speaking a new language like we are walking a tightrope without a net. We believe that one misplaced preposition means we plummet into an abyss of public humiliation. But language is just a bridge.
A bridge.
Yeah, as long as the other person can walk across that bridge and understand the concept you were trying to share, the bridge is a complete success. The bridge does not have to be painted a flawless color to be structurally sound.
A functional bridge is a triumphant bridge. Yet, even knowing that, learners still face the heavy psychological burden of the accent myth.
Right, the accent myth.
Society has subtly conditioned people to feel shame about possessing a non-native accent, treating it as this auditory flaw that needs to be scrubbed away through intense training.
But the sources completely dismantle this myth. Having an accent is not a failure of pronunciation. It is audible proof of cognitive flexibility.
It literally signals to the room that you possess the complex neurological architecture to operate in more than one linguistic world.
Which is amazing.
It's a marker of your history, your cultural identity, and your intelligence.
Reframing an accent as a badge of honor is powerful, but you still have to, put in the reps to build vocal confidence. This is where we bring the architecture of tiny habits back into the picture. How do you practice when the stakes of real-world conversations still feel way too high? You manipulate the environment to lower the stakes. You practice completely alone.
The specific technique recommended is shadowing in front of a mirror.
Shadowing. How does that work?
Shadowing involves listening to a native speaker, perhaps an audiobook or a podcast, and repeating their words a fraction of a second after they say them. You are mimicking the rhythm, the intonation, and the physical mouth movements. Doing this in front of a mirror is a form of highly controlled environment design.
Because you're removing all external judgment. There's no one there to grade your tightrope walk. It's the ultimate 1% habit stack. You can stack 2 minutes of shadowing onto your morning routine while you wait for the shower to warm up.
Exactly. By physically moving your articulatory muscles without the pressure of formulating original thoughts, you bypass the anxiety centers of the brain, and more importantly, you are actively doing battle with the inner critic. When the thought arises, I sound foolish, the physical act of continuing to speak forces a cognitive rewrite. You begin to replace a fixed mindset of, I am bad at this, with the growth mindset of, I am actively building a skill.
You're creating internal momentum, which brings us to the final threshold of your sources. You've conquered the morning neurochemistry, you've built your habit architecture, and you've silenced the inner critic in the mirror. Now you actually have to step out the front door and interact with the unpredictable world.
The real test.
Right. It is time to execute that connection over perfection philosophy.
And the ultimate testing ground for this is the universally dreaded arena of small talk.
Ugh, people absolutely despise small talk. They roll their eyes and complain that talking about the weather or the weekend is painfully superficial. We all just want to jump straight into deep, meaningful conversations about our hopes and dreams.
But the sources provide a brilliant evolutionary defense of small talk.
They really do.
If you look at it through the lens of human psychology and sociology, small talk is not meant to be deeply philosophical. It is fundamentally a mammalian safety check.
A social bridge.
Yes. When you approach a stranger, both of your nervous systems are silently asking, is this person a threat? Engaging in lightweight, predictable banter is a behavioral ping. It signals, I'm friendly, I understand the social contract, and I am safe to engage with.
You cannot build a skyscraper of deep conversation until you've poured the concrete foundation of basic safety. And the sources give us the exact materials for that foundation, which are safe topics.
The weather, the food, or simply commenting on the shared environment.
Right, like if you're standing in a long line, just acknowledging the wait builds an instant, low-stakes alliance with the person next to you.
However, recognizing the value of small talk doesn't automatically cure the anxiety of initiating it. When the adrenaline spikes and your mind goes completely blank, you need a system.
Because memory fails us when we panic.
Exactly. The sources offer a highly practical cognitive anchor, which is the FORD method, FORD.
It is essentially a habit stack for social anxiety. When the silence gets heavy, you don't have to desperately search the room for a topic, you just run the acronym. Let's break down the mechanics of it. Say I'm at a networking event and the conversation is dying. I go to F, which stands for family.
You ask, do you have any family in the area? Or, how are your kids doing? It's universally relatable. If that doesn't flow, you move to O for occupation.
Right.
What line of work are you in? Or, what's the most challenging project you're dealing with right now?
Men are for recreation. The hobbies. What do you do to unplug on the weekends?
Yeah.
Or have you read anything good lately?
And finally, D for dreams, which usually manifests as future plans. Do you have any travel lined up for the summer, or what are you looking forward to this year?
The FORD method provides an automatic behavioral system. You're removing the friction of having to be spontaneously charismatic.
Huh?
But there is a massive caveat in the research.
Oh, a huge one.
You can memorize the FORD acronym perfectly, but if you do not pair it with active listening, the social bridge will immediately collapse.
The mechanics of active listening really come down to the specific way you formulate your questions. The quickest way to kill a conversation is to ask a closed-ended question.
Like a yes or no question.
Right. If I asked, did you have a good weekend? Your brain's autopilot can just output the word yes. The loop is closed, the ball is back in my court, and the pressure is back on me to keep the interaction alive.
A closed-ended question asks for a data point. An open-ended question asks for a narrative. To keep the bridge open, you must initiate your questions with why, how, or what. These interrogatives bypass the brain's autopilot.
So instead of, did you have a good weekend, I ask, what was the most surprising part of your weekend? Instead of, do you like your job, I ask, how did you originally end up in your field?
You're forcing the other person to construct a story.
And human beings are biologically wired to love telling their own stories. When you ask a how or why question, you are handing them the microphone and giving them the stage.
Which is the ultimate relief if you're nervous about your language skills or your social anxiety. You don't have to perform. You just have to be genuinely curious and let them do the heavy lifting of the conversation. Curiosity becomes your primary social tool.
It is a profound shift in perspective. You stop worrying about how interesting you are, and you focus entirely on being interested in them.
And that profound shift brings us all the way back to the duvet cover at minute 0. Look at the immense ground we've covered through these sources. We started with the neurobiology of waking up, learning that ignoring the snooze button and getting natural light prevents sleep inertia and sets a baseline of control.
We then took that tiny locus of control and applied the mathematics of the compound effect. We used habit stacking and environment design to bypass motivation and guarantee 1% daily improvements.
Right. Then we brought that architecture inward, manipulating our internal environment by practicing in the mirror. We reframed accents as cognitive triumphs and silenced the inner critic by proving that language is just a functional bridge for human connection.
And finally, armed with that internal stability, we stepped out into the physical world. We recognized small talk as a vital safety ping and utilized the FORD method and open-ended curiosity to effortlessly navigate conversations with strangers.
The overarching narrative here is deeply empowering. You do not need a massive, chaotic overhaul to change the trajectory of your life or your confidence.
Right.
You just need to engineer the friction in your environment and master the next 5 minutes. It's always just the next 5 minutes.
It's a very systematic approach to human flourishing, and it leaves us with an incredibly compelling question to consider regarding our environments.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, we've discussed manipulating physical spaces like hiding the remote, placing water bottles to engineer our solo habits. But what happens when we apply the concept of environment design to our social circles?
Oh, treating the people around you as the environment itself.
Precisely. If the people you engage with are your social environment, how much does choosing your conversational partners dictate your 1% compound growth?
That is wild to think about.
Right. If you intentionally utilize small talk to build bridges with people who actively inspire you, who challenge you, and who demonstrate the growth mindset, how much faster does your internal confidence compound? You aren't just designing your morning. You are designing the social ecosystem that shapes your identity.
That is a phenomenal lens to view your daily interactions through. It really demonstrates how every tiny action reverberates outward. Well, thank you for sharing this incredible stack of sources with us. It's a powerful reminder that the micro dictates the macro. Keep designing those environments, keep seeking out those 1% wins, and remember, as long as the bridge holds, you're doing perfectly fine.